Hello, friends, I guess, and foes. This is Women Wrestlers You Should Know, sponsored by Premier Pro Wrestling. I'm Randy Ritchie, and today we're going to talk about SoCal Val. Why? Because I want to talk about SoCal Val. Paige Nicole Mayo, I think she's Italian or at least part. Born March 27th, 1986, is an American professional valet, occasional professional wrestler, interviewer, ring announcer, model, and ringside attendant who is better known by her ring name, SoCal Val. Now, there's so much else in here. Val really paid her dues as far as the indies go, and I don't want to put people over that don't put me over anymore, folks. So we're not going to go there and talk about all this stuff. But the bottom line to SoCal Val is her crowning achievements were with TNA Wrestling, TNA Impact, specifically TNA Impact Wrestling when it was on Spike TV, which was a network. And let me tell you, man, this girl did so much more than people gave her credit for. And in my opinion, they didn't treat her as well as they should have. And yes, I think in some instances they even held her back. But at the end of the day, I guess what you could really call her was a hostess for the tapings and a legit hostess for the pay-per-views. She was just so busy, doing so many things. But one of the things she used to have to do is keep that crowd encouraged. A lot of stuff that you saw on Impact was garbage, and a lot of what you saw was no crowd reaction. The way things were done, they were just ridiculous. And one of the things they used to do was people would be waiting outside to get into the studio in that Florida heat, that Orlando humidity, for an hour later than they should have because Vince Russo wasn't done playing king shit. So they'd be out there roasting in the sun and burnt out before they even got in there. So God forbid the ones that stuck around would have any energy throughout the tapings, which were long, man. I mean long. And this girl, if you saw her or not on camera, was there helping boost the energy. Was just helping boost the energy. So here's an article, and maybe I should credit the person that wrote the article and did the interview. I'm going to go ahead and say it was by Sai Mohan, and this is from October 3rd, 2022, so less than a year ago. I'm not going to read you the whole article, but I'm going to share with you Val's direct comments, but also the fact that Val she's a really, pardon me, a beautiful woman, okay? But you don't get the full picture until you also see what a positive, happy, sparkly, exuberant person that she is to go along with her looks, And I think a lot of times they took for granted some of her ideas, and some of her ideas are really cool, like the one I'm going to get into here. Former Impact Wrestling personality SoCal Val has disputed the notion that quote-unquote divas can no longer thrive in the current climate of women's wrestling, arguing that there is still a place in the business for female valets and the genre of women's wrestling that existed pre-2015. So, let's just read what she says and then I'll comment. I have no idea why anyone thought that diva was a negative term. In a recent interview, she said, a diva to me was always a very empowering term. I would never be in wrestling if it wasn't for the WWD Divas era, and I don't mean that just in terms of matches. With all due respect, I would have never been in wrestling if it was just serious wrestlers. With all due respect to AJ Lee and the others who are just casually dressed and are not super sparkly and glamorous, those aren't my type of girls. I wanted to be a Tori Wilson or a Sunny. I wanted to do the modeling shoots. I wanted to do the interviews and managing the wrestlers and things like that. Val pointed out how WWE's Divas Search talent competition provided the likes of Michelle McCool, Maurice, Maria Canales, Christy Hemme, and Candice Michelle an opportunity to break into the business. The fact, this is Val again, the fact that we can't look at that period of time and go, there were some great people in that era is really unfortunate. Val admitted people forget how many great talents came out of the Diva search. Now, did it get a little out of hand with the gravy matches and the jelly pool matches? Sure. But when I wanted to wrestle at all, I wanted to be in an evening gown or lingerie match. I wanted to exude this sort of powerful sexuality, this feminism that I thought was really empowering. So, it's a shame for me to hear that people don't like it when we call them divas. Now, did I like it when the belt was a butterfly design? She thought that was a little stupid, but the term diva to me personally was very empowering. So I find it very interesting that people have such a vitriolic heat against that term. This was my era, and because I didn't want to physically wrestle, these were my girls. So the point that she's making is a very good and valid point. When you go back into it, the same thing bodes for men. Managers, valets, manservants. You know what I'm saying? She's absolutely right. There's room for all of it. And we're all supposed to come in different shapes and sizes. I mean, and you know, it's a shame that there isn't another, for example, Bobby Heenan anymore. When Val was a manager for TNA, Tess and Albert, that's when I really connected with her. Oh, no, she's talking about Trish. When she was a manager for TNA, Tess and Albert, that's when I really connected with her, Val stressed. When she became a serious wrestler, and I mean this with all due respect, I couldn't relate as much. Even with Lita, I couldn't relate as much. I didn't want to be taken seriously as a female wrestler. I do think it's great that they have that option, but it's not personally what I wanted to do. Val then explained why it's very anti-feminist for anyone to expect all female wrestlers to focus solely on their in-ring craft. This should be interesting. So the fact that we can't have both serious female wrestling and glamorous divas now, I feel like is very anti-feminist, Val said, in a sense that feminism is about having freedom of choice. And if my choice wasn't to be an athletic, super serious wrestler, that's my choice. If my choice was to be sexy and a diva type, that's my choice. Feminism is about supporting women's choices. So you can't sit there and say, if you weren't a serious wrestler, you didn't contribute to the business. People like Sunny, Sable, Tori Wilson, and Candice Michelle. These women were my idols. So I find it very interesting that people have such an issue with the Divas era. Because if there was no Divas era, I would have lost interest immediately. And I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb there and say, I think a lot of people would. You know, wrestling needs some non-wrestlers, including, and there's room, and like she said, the key word there would be both. Now, this is a brilliant idea, and this is something that should be looked at. And the other thing that she didn't bring up, and I'm sure she would if you were here and we could ask her, if she was here and we could ask her, nobody can also deny the traction that the Divas got in their own programming. Not saying that every female wrestler or every female wrestling personality should be a diva. You know, the bottom line, again, stress that key word both. It's a brilliant idea, in my opinion. Now, again, she paid her dues on the indies. She did a lot of stuff and a lot of stuff for nothing. And I don't want to put any of those people over even by mentioning them. When I worked with Val at TNA Wrestling, I can't tell you how happy and positive this girl was. I mean, this girl is. I'm sure she still is the same way. There was so much stress, but she had such a great sense of humor that it would actually spill out into the rest of us that had to do things ringside, i.e. one of my responsibilities was stage managing. So I would spend a lot of time during tapings and pay-per-views with Val, And I can remember going out of the studio in Orlando when we did a few pay-per-views, and yeah, we did a few pay-per-views on the road. And, you know, I would say a lot of times when I was stressed out dealing with all the different personalities, and some of them were idiots and assholes, Val would rope me back in and get me laughing or smiling, and next thing I knew, I forgot what I was pissed off about. And that's what she really just pours out of her skin, you know. Again, at the time I was married, I have 3 daughters. So would I notice how attractive and how beautiful and how quote-unquote sexy Val was? Well, of course I would notice. But if you're someone like me in that position, in that scenario, especially when I had 3 daughters, and my oldest one wasn't a whole hell of a lot younger than Val, I could block that part of it out. And Val, knowing that I wasn't some sort of threat or creeper, could be comfortable around me too, you know? And that was nice. It was a nice feeling. And I didn't look at Val as a piece of ass. I looked at Val as somebody that I really enjoyed working with on those days, you know? And she just was exuberant, you know? Now, I don't like this Wikipedia shit because I go to click on the personal information part and I'm thinking, I wonder what happened. Because at the time she had to be 20 or early 20s back then in '06. But I want to see, did she get married? Who did she marry? Does she have any kids? You know what I mean? All it said in there was the personal info or personal life or whatever the hell that column is on Wikipedia is Val was suspected of a DUI in 2013 or 14. And she was charged with a DUI and fleeing the scene of an accident, but there wasn't a hell of a lot of other details. And when you get that, when you click on that, you see all this crazy. This is why I hate the internet wrestling community so much, because there's more out there, and it's not more. It's the same bullshit that she was charged, and I guess they must have caught her vehicle on camera. But all this says is that she was charged and she pleaded not guilty. So I'm not going to dig all night because it's really not that important to me. And I was pissed off at the fact that that's what the personal info is. And I was even more pissed off that you can find less about SoCal Val than you can find articles about her suspected DUI, you know, which is the same fucking article, you know. You love to bury her, you know. This new woke generation, you know. Let me tell you something, and I don't know for sure, but I know this. It doesn't talk about the outcome. It doesn't say that she was she was convicted. Okay, you can't find anything that says she was convicted. Therefore, how do you go into a DUI where she did not blow into a breathalyzer and claim and plead not guilty? Could it be the fact that she might not have been fucking guilty? You see what I'm saying? And here's where I'm going with this. You could call me naive or whatever, but my sense of street smarts tells me that if she was never convicted of it, and there's no article saying she was convicted of it, if you know Val, one of the things you know about her, she is a shitty driver. She knows she's a shitty driver. She's a self-proclaimed shitty driver. And I've seen her 2 times where she did some things that a shitty driver would do, and she was so busted up about it. I just wanted to hug her, you know, because I don't think that Val got a DUI. I honestly don't. But I do think she could have made a stupid mistake because some people are just shitty drivers, but I don't think we should bury her like that. So at the end of the day, again, I left in 2007. I was there for a year working with Val, and I'm talking about TNA or TNA Impact. When I left, I didn't keep in touch with Val. I didn't keep in touch with anybody, but it wasn't a good or bad thing. It's just how it was. And I'm going to go ahead and still consider Val a friend. People like that are so positive. And here's an example. Nobody likes Vince Russo. I don't like Vince Russo. One of the reasons I don't like Vince Russo is because I think Abyss, Vince Russo, and Terry Taylor are all complacent in when Daphne got hurt, when she took that stupid choke slam through a board, not even a table for Abyss, because Vince wrote it, and then Abyss manipulated, and then Terry Taylor finished her off by getting her to take that bump that hurt her, that prompted a huge lawsuit. So that right there should be enough to tell anybody about Vince Russo. Well, here's where I'm at, ready to tell him off and, tear him a new one if I saw him and wonder if I saw him, if I want to smack him or not. Val's not like that. She's a positive girl, and she looks for the good, and she looked for the good even in Vince Russo. So what does that tell you about SoCal Val? God bless her. This is Women Wrestlers You Should Know. Again, brought to you by Premier Pro Wrestling with no YouTube commercials on it. So please at least be cool, like, and subscribe. Talk to you soon.